In this video, we'll talk about the admission application process, especially for those students who may be interested in applying to one of the graduate programs within the College of Education and Human Development. The application process itself is not too daunting, however, there are many moving parts, so the point of this video is to help you understand what the lifespan of a typical application process looks like. We will discuss the role that the graduate school plays in consolidating all applications, as well as the general application materials timeline, the constituent pieces that make up your application, and what the post-application communication and decision timeline looks like. All applications start with the graduate school, and that is where you will officially apply. The graduate school pulls all admission-related documents before dispersing them to individual colleges to make decisions. The graduate school is also the regulatory body for all graduate students, which means that the graduate school sets its own deadlines and timetables, its own policies. So bookmarking the website you see on the screen will be a very important thing to do because you will be required to adhere to the policies as set forth by the graduate school should you be admitted. Depending on the deadlines associated with different graduate programs in our college, a good rule of thumb is that you should really try to begin your application 6 to 8 weeks before the actual application deadline. Strongly encourage you to not live by submitting documents at the very last minute. Sometimes it can't be helped, but if you do plan accordingly, you don't have to live that dramatically. Once you submit your application through the graduate school, some pieces that are a part of that application you see on the screen here. We're going to talk about each of those pieces over the next few slides because there are some important tips to share with you as you're preparing your application. Again, a standard disclaimer for this entire webinar will just be that you really should check with your respective program if there might be any differences that deviate from what we're going to talk about here today. Typically, most students will begin with submitting a graduate school application through the graduate school website. This is pretty easy to do and it only requires some basic information about yourself, like your name, your birthday, social security number, but it also will ask you to transcribe some pieces of your resume and some of your academic history and background. It will also allow for a space for you to submit the names of individuals who will be writing your recommendation letters. The graduate application is not free, so there are different fee structures based on if you're a brand new applicant, if you're returning, if you're applying for a certificate program. So make sure to check those out on the graduate school website. The other important part related to the financials is check your residency status. And by this, I mean at what tuition rate will you be charged if you choose to admit and begin your graduate program. So for instance, some counties that are on the Indiana-Kentucky border do get in-state tuition. However, most other states will not. Also, before you begin your application, make sure that you ask your respective program about opportunities for any graduate funding. And what graduate funding, if you are awarded such an opportunity, provides is full tuition, as well as a small monthly stipend, and generally also a small healthcare insurance plan as well. Funding is generally very competitive, which is why so many people go after it. But ask before you commit because graduate programs are not inexpensive. Most graduate programs will ask that you submit a resume as part of your application materials. So before you just pull up any Microsoft Word template, get some feedback, reflect on the things that you have done, look at some sample resumes in your field by doing a basic Google search. And as I mentioned earlier, don't solely rely on templates. You may have done some really extraordinary things that templates may not account for, and generally students are really hesitant to break the template and to add any headings that might actually serve them better. As always, make sure that your formatting, spelling, and editing is up to date. Nothing really destroys an application more than poor grammar mistakes or other egregious errors. And then make sure that your resume is the most accurate and up-to-date document that you have. Your goal statement is generally the next most important document. Some programs may weigh the resume and the goal statement more than actually your transcripts and letter of recommendation. Other programs may have their own system. In general, a good goal statement should communicate your fit with the program. So generally, students will draw on their professional background, maybe some personal experiences. They may talk about how those experiences have led them to consider a graduate degree and what they hope that this graduate degree will afford to them in the future. Proper grammar, flow, essay construction, again, very crucial here as well. But it's important to note that your goal statement should not just be a rehash of your resume. It really should just be an overall snapshot of you as a working and as a scholarly professional as well. As with the resume, have someone edit it and proofread it, have someone else look at it. Don't just write the first things that come to your mind. You want to present yourself in the best light possible. As part of your application materials, you will be required to submit transcripts from all undergraduate institutions you've ever attended. And this would include, for instance, if you took any summer classes at a community college. No matter where you've studied, that transcript needs to be a part of your graduate record as well. This is mostly for us to keep in line with our accreditation requirements, which require that we have a complete record on all students who ever enroll. This can sometimes be the longest part of your application because you are required to contact the institution at which you've studied and to request what we call an official transcript. An official transcript is usually printed, if we're thinking about the old school method, on tamper-proof paper. There's usually a seal, and in other ways it indicates that it came from that institution directly. If you have any spare copies you've been sitting on, those will not be considered official. For institutions that do participate in online document exchange, like Parchment or the Transcript Clearinghouse, those are fine resources to utilize, and those transcripts would be considered official. However, just make sure to request them as soon as you are able. These transcripts, very importantly, must go to the graduate school. Sometimes students mistakenly send them to the undergraduate admissions, and unless you're applying for another bachelor's degree, that's not where it needs to go. If you're ever confused about where the transcript should be sent, especially if you're using one of the online methods, you can always email gradadm, so gradadm at louisville.edu, and they will be able to assist you. Those programs will require that you submit 2 letters of recommendation, and depending on how ahead of time you know who these individuals will be, you can have anywhere between 3 to 6 weeks to get this aspect completed. Generally, a strong letter of recommendation writer should be someone that can talk about you as a person, as an employee, as a leader, someone that can point concretely to your abilities and why this particular graduate program would help you take that to the next level. Within the graduate school application, you have the room to provide up to 3, sometimes even 4 names of individuals that would be prospective letter writers. You simply just need to provide an email address for them, and then the system will alert them that there is a form that needs to be completed. Sometimes letter writers might exceed what is on that form, and by that I mean that the form itself generally allows the letter writer to just check off just some basic skills and just provide some very routine feedback. However, some letter writers generally do provide a full-length business style letter that speaks a little bit more elegantly to who you are as an applicant. You're not penalized for whichever option your letter writer chooses to do. However, keep that in mind as you provide the names of your future letter of recommendation writers. Now, you may recall from the first slide that we talked about the GRE potentially being a requirement, and that's something that depends from program to program. Some programs are moving away from the GRE, so they're basically basing all of their admission application on those documents that we've already discussed. However, if your program may still require the GRE, then take at least a month, if not more, to take time to prepare. GRE prep books can be checked out from most libraries, and of course they can be purchased online through a lot of your major retailers. The GRE exam must be taken at a specifically authorized place, so you would need to check out their website for if there's such a place near you. For instance, I had to drive an hour away to take my GRE, so there was not one convenient to me. So if you may have to take time off from work or make childcare arrangements or anything like that, make sure that you look up those testing dates and those testing sites ahead of time. The GRE tends to test 3 major areas. So that's your verbal reasoning, your quantitative reasoning, and then your analytical skills. These are all of the elements that your graduate program will really rely on. And for some programs, they may decide that through your resume and your cover letter, you've already demonstrated enough of that. Other programs may require the GRE in addition to your materials to make sure that they have the best candidates moving forward. So while the GRE may be going away from some programs, it may not be from others. So make sure to check your program's website to know whether you are required to complete this as part of your application. So you've submitted all of your application materials and now you're kicking back and you're just wondering, well, how long am I supposed to wait until I have an admission decision? This can really vary because some programs within our college undertake different types of admission review styles. For instance, some programs may do rolling admissions, meaning that as soon as an application is complete, they will decide whether the student is admitted or not. Other programs may have a post-deadline admission, meaning that no applications will be reviewed for admission until the official application deadline is passed. And some programs may require all of your normal admission materials, but they might also require an interview on top of that. So that can all play a different factor in how long it takes for you to actually hear back about your decision status. However, another layer here is once we do receive your admission status from the department who evaluates it, we then have to communicate that admission status to the graduate school, who then has to take several steps to activate your new student profile, to create a new U of L ID, and just to activate some other software and odds and ends that you're going to need as a student. So that can sometimes take an additional week in addition to just waiting for the department to make a decision. In general, it can sometimes take between 4 to 6 weeks from you submitting your materials. However, if the department does rolling admission, you may certainly find out earlier than that. But as a general rule of thumb, 4 to 6 weeks after the published admission application date, that is what you should be anticipating. This is a short introduction to the admission lifespan, as well as all of the steps needed to have a complete application. If you have any other questions about this process, you're welcome to email cehdgss@louisville.edu, and a member of our team will get back to you and answer your question. If you have any other suggestions for admission-related videos and /webinars that you'd like to see, you can share your thoughts and feedback via that email address.